Hello and welcome to Gin with Gwynne. I'm Oliver Gwynne, and this is where I give you my off the cuff and unrehearsed thoughts on marketing data and philosophy. This week I'm talking about overcoming shyness. Now, you probably think, as I am somebody who does webinars and blogs and podcasts and all these kind of things, that I must be genuinely an outgoing person. And while that's true today, it's definitely not been the case for most of my life. I would say I was pretty painfully shy throughout my teenage years, into my early 20s. And I still get moments of shyness and anxiety even now. Um, I, I guess I was put in a situation where, because I was starting a business and I needed to pay bills, I knew that, hey, I can't afford to be shy. I need to put myself out there. I realized that I, as somebody who was running a business, needed to be sort of the front man of my business and be in the public space. But originally, I remember when I started my business, I was terrified to even like call people or talk to prospects. I was absolutely terrified of it, and I had to get over it. So speaking to somebody recently, and they were just sort of asking my advice on this, and they were saying that they were very worried about an upcoming presentation that they had to give at work, and just thought it'd be a good thing to talk about. I mean, shyness is often sort of a blend of social anxiety, fear of judgment, self consciousness. I don't think that it's a character flaw. I think it's something that we all experience at one time or another. And I also feel that, personally, I do worry a little bit that anxiety is normal and everybody has anxiety, and we should be very careful about sort of prescribing against those things. But that's just my personal thought on that. Epictetus, Epictetus, Stoic philosopher, said, "Man is not worried by real problems so much as his imagined anxieties about real problems." Shyness often comes from concern about how others perceive us, uh, and how we might be misinterpreted, or how we might come across, or that we've got nothing interesting to say or nothing interesting to offer. Lao Tzu said, care about what other people think, and you will always be their prisoner. And Carl Rogers, the psychologist, said, the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. And I think that's very true. If you're somebody who's shy or anxious, that if you're worried about what other people think, then yeah, you will always be beholden to them. You will always have that in your mind, and you will always act in sort of a performative way. I think the weird thing about today's society is that a lot of us are guilty of sort of performing in our everyday lives. It's become so normal that we, for example, even when we're out and about, we think, oh, I need to get a cute selfie of myself in this location, or I need to show that I've been to this location because, and then I'm going to share that with the world. It's very odd way of thinking when you think about it. Didn't used to be the case, of course, before social media. We used to take pictures, and the only people who would see those pictures were ourselves and our very close friend and family. And now we're taking pictures specifically to show the world that we're busy and active and doing interesting things. And there's definitely a performative element in that. Even what I'm doing now, of course, is some sort of performance to show you that I know about things and I can talk about things. And so it's very odd that we've come into this world where that's become more and more normal. And so you would expect, to a degree, that shyness would maybe be less prevalent, but I don't think that's really the case. I think, if anything, we're more anxious about, hey, if I say this thing, could it be misinterpreted, and will people not like the thing that I'm saying, or are people going to disagree with me if I give an opinion that maybe is unpopular, and all of this kind of stuff. And so I think actually today we are more conscious about the fact that we are sharing things in a space where anybody and everybody can sort of see them, and then that make us more um, worried about how we're being perceived and how we are um, giving an impression to the world that might be negative. I think the only way to solve this is to take that stoic mindset. If you're worried about rejection or embarrassment without much evidence, you can't control how other people perceive you. You might do completely the right thing and people might still perceive it the wrong way. You have no control over that. And at the end of the day, does it really matter to you? It doesn't really affect you unless you let it. You have control only over how you let people affect your own mind and nothing else. I think I've given this analogy before, but two old men at a bar go and chat to some young lady and offer to buy her a drink. The worst that can happen is that she says no. That's the worst that can happen. Doesn't matter. They're not expecting that she's gonna go home with them or anything like that, and so only good things can happen. But actually, we're all old men at the bar anyway, because only good things can happen. The worst thing that can happen is that, she says no, and it doesn't really matter if you don't let it affect you. And I think that's very true. So I guess my tip here is just you have to start realizing the fact that what does it matter if people don't like you or they don't like what you're saying? Does it really affect you in any way, shape, or form? Only you can decide to let it affect you. And that's a good state of mind to be in. And that's not to say that you should just not give a shit about other people's opinion and feedback and whatever. That's also the other side of that coin. But if you're a shy individual, then maybe you're thinking too much about that. The other thing I wanted to say is, there's a classic Eleanor Roosevelt quote, "Do one thing every day that scares you." And I think for me, the thing that helped me was just putting myself in situations that scared me and worried me, and doing that regularly and consciously doing that, sort of, uh, a version of therapy almost. If you do something over a regular period of time, you will grow in confidence. The more you do it, the less scary it becomes. The more you realize, like, hey, there was nothing to worry about here. Actually, I'm completely fine. And, that applies to all elements of your life. But I think certainly if you're shy, if you can find a smaller way of doing things, then that's often great that you can sort of practice on. Uh, and you can practice in a small way. So if you're really scared about public speaking, then why not go to an event, like a really small event with 4 or 5 people that is it doesn't even have to be associated with your industry, or it doesn't even have to be an event that you're interested in, or it could be purposely something that you're not gonna see those people again, and then if you do something embarrassing, it doesn't matter, the stakes are really low because you're not gonna see those people again or anything like that, and of course, that's probably not gonna happen anyway. So if you can do small things on a regular basis, then it will help you to overcome it and you'll feel more confident. And even doing things on a regular basis is great because even if you've done something 1,000 times and then you stop for a while, you will lose a little bit of confidence. You'll feel nervous again. And then as soon as you get back into it, you'll be like, oh, yeah, like riding a bike. I know how to do this. I remember all these things, all of that kind of stuff. For many years, I was a videographer. I used to go and film a lot of stuff. And then I stopped doing that. And then whenever I suddenly needed to do some videography, I got really nervous about it, and I was worried about I overplanned probably. But as soon as I was there, I was like, okay, I need dum 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 dum, dum," and I knew exactly what I needed off the top of my head just from my past experience. And I think the more that you can build up that, the more evidence you'll have that actually everything's fine and you don't need to worry. So do things that scare you on a regular basis, and you realize that they're not so scary. My other piece of advice is find a place where you're already confident. There's definitely some area in your life where you feel like you're the boss, you're in charge, you're really good at that thing. Typically, the reason that we are scared or anxious about things is because we're not very good at them, or we perceive that we're not particularly good at them. And so we want to spend less time on them. But if you are good in bowling, or if you're good at football or something, find the things that you can take from your routine, or find things that you can take from your lesson in that particular thing and then try and apply them to your new situation where you feel less confident. So if you're a good football player or whatever, and the way that you're good is that you warm up and you do it over an hour before you go play, and you eat right and you do all these things to prepare, and then when you're in that moment, you're in there and you're fully concentrated. Well, take that same approach to public speaking or going to networking or anything like that. For me, weirdly, it was kind of the other way around for a long time. I became confident in business, but I was not very confident in sort of dating and romantic life. And so I started to apply the things that I had learnt in business to dating in a weird way. I was sort of pitching to people I was dating, but by having that same kind of routine and, practicing a little bit before I went on the date and thinking about what I wanted to say and all these kind of things and thinking about what questions I was going to prompt the person with, it did really help me in dating. And so if you can find an area where you're really confident, then just apply that to the area that you're not, or at least the routines that go into that. A few pieces of practical advice now. So if you're networking, I think is really difficult, especially if you're in a room full of strangers and you don't know anybody. The worst thing you can do is go and talk to that one person that you do know and just stay by them all night, because what's the point if you're not going to go out there and meet new people? Often, what people are sort of guilty of doing when in networking is two or three people will sort of form a circle, and it's really difficult to break in, and they know each other sometimes, and you're trying to like find a way in. Um, what I would advise in that is to go over. This is what I do every time. I just go, "Hey guys, I'm just going to rudely interrupt," and it works every time because you're not actually being rude and interrupting, but by prompting that, you're kind of saying, "Hey, I'm interrupting your conversation," and they'll be like, "Oh no, it's no problem. We're just talking about blah blah blah," and you'll be like, "Cool," and instantly you've got a way into that conversation. That's what I do every single time. If there's a group of people and it's closed, I'm like, I just want to talk to somebody. I just go, "Hey, I'm just going to rudely interrupt you," and now I'm part of your conversation, basically. Another thing that I'd really advise in networking, if you're suddenly, if a conversation ends or you get out of a conversation, you want to get into a new conversation, you see somebody there on your own, you're on your own. Hey, I'll go talk to you next. How are you? What are you doing? That's also a good way of just sort of networking. If you've ever been to an event that I've hosted or I've been at, typically I'm always the person that will go and talk to you. If you're like the shy person in the corner who doesn't want to talk to people, I'll definitely go up to you and talk to you because I'm always like, I know exactly how you feel. I used to feel really shy about these kind of things, and so uh, I'm always the person that tries to involve others. And you'll find that naturally people do want to involve you in the conversation and they want to get more out of you. Uh, and that's People are generous. They want to involve you in the conversation. So don't worry so much about that. Now, what if you get into a situation, that kind of nightmare situation where you get into a conversation and you have no fucking clue what people are talking about? You have no relation, and they're like, "What's your opinion on that?" And maybe you've got no work experience, so you don't know about what they're talking about. Maybe you're just new to the industry and you don't know. Don't worry about it. I think it's always better to be honest about those things than sort of try and make something up and sort of reveal that you don't know something. You could just say, "Well, to be honest, I'm quite new to this world. I don't really know that. I've not encountered that myself. But this situation that I've encountered is a bit similar," or something like that. And that might just be a good way of preempting, like, "Hey, I don't know this thing that you're talking about in detail, particularly." Instead of being shy and like, "Oh, I don't really know," just be upfront and honest about it. Because if you are open with your vulnerabilities, people are very accepting. And that's my final sort of tip on this. If you're talking to a bunch of people and you're suddenly shaking and you're worried about it, start your thing with saying, "Hey, I'm actually a little bit nervous about this. I didn't realize there'd be so many people. I've not done this in a while." And people will be completely fine. People anticipate that these things make people nervous. And I've got to be honest, I've seen a lot of bad public speakers, especially people pitching their business. But you're like, yeah, it's a high, intense environment. And in those situations, I guess my last piece of advice is, if you are talking about something and you're really worried about it or you're really nervous, then one, take your time. Two, and this is opposite to take your time, but be short, just be quick, just give a top level overview, just make it nice and short and memorable and say the key important things. I think what people tend to do is they get nervous and then they talk too much. And then because they're nervous, they trip over themselves, they over rehearse in their mind, and then that comes out worse. So I think it's better in a way to be short and be clear and just be vulnerable. People say, "Hey, I'm a little bit nervous. There's a bit of pressure here. I'm just going to talk for 2 minutes about what we do, and then I'm going to leave. And if you've got any questions, ask me then." Um, and then I guess I keep saying it's the last tip, and then I keep thinking of more things because this is actually unrehearsed. Find what works for you and understand that in detail. So, my boss, Candice, hi Candice, if you're watching, she's a lot better if I don't prepare her. If I don't tell her what I'm going to ask her when we're talking, much better. If I tell her, then she will go and she'll rehearse things and she'll have things in her mind. And it comes across, especially if we're recording something, a little bit cheesy and a little bit rehearsed. Now, she likes to rehearse, but I like it when she's off the cuff because I think it comes across as more genuine. She has such a depth of knowledge that I'm not really worried about it. But if I prepare her by giving her questions, then she tends to be not as good. So if you can understand for yourself, how do I get the best out of myself? I'm sort of half and half. I need to do a little bit of preparation if I'm doing a webinar, and then, but not to the point where I actually know word for word what I'm saying. I just need to know the key points that I'm going to hit. So figure out what works for you and understand that in detail, and then you'll be better prepared for when you're in a situation that makes you uncomfortable. So just to wrap up, one, try and do things that make you uncomfortable little and often. Do those things in a small way where the stakes are not so high. 3, realize that whatever imagined scenario that you've got in your head in real life, nothing that bad will happen. And even if it does, people are very forgiving. 4, find an area of your life where you are confident and try and apply those routines or that kind of confidence to the areas where you're not so confident. 5, if you're struggling to get involved in a conversation, just go over and say, "Hey, I'm sorry to be rude, but I'm just going to join in your conversation." If somebody's on their own, just say, "Hey, you're on your own, I'm on your own, let's speak." And last but not least, I guess, find what works for you and make sure that you follow that routine every single time. Those have been my thoughts on overcoming shyness. Do you have any tips in the comments below? Let me know. Thanks very much for watching.